Welcome to Healing Generations, a podcast creating a dialogue uplifting the importance of healing, strengthening, and supporting our communities, and that addresses the disparities and inequities in communities of color. Healing Generations is brought to you by the Healing Generations Institute, a collaborative initiative of the National Compadres Network and the Brotherhood of Elders. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on our new releases.
Blessings, everyone. This is Jerry Teo with the Healing Generations podcast, and we'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining us today for another dialogue, another exploration, another session in which we explore the generations of medicine, teachings, and blessings that we have as we call on that to assist us and guide us in this very challenging time for us. Today, we are going to actually play a recording, a session that we did this last Monday with a group of teachers, a group of wisdom keepers. We did a FaceTime Live, and we decided that the teachings that were shared there were so pertinent for today, right now, as we're exploring many things, the challenges in our lives with the pandemic, with the issues of racism, with the election and all of those things. And so we decided to share it again here on the Healing Generations podcast. So we invite you to listen, invite you to be open, and invite you to go on this journey with us as we explore our journey towards healing generations. Thank you very much.
I want to thank everybody for chiming in to our Facebook Live. Our Facebook Live today is really about honoring our ancestors, healing, and grounding ourselves. I think it's one of those things where this time of year, it brings a lot of feelings, it brings a lot of anxiety, and we have, then we have this election tomorrow. So I want to go through and just introduce you to everybody. We have Jerry Teo, Maestro Jerry Teo, and Maestra Susie from the National Compadres Network. And we have also Maestra Deborah Camarillo, sorry about that. Anyway, I want to thank you for coming and talking and sharing your view, along with Baba Greg Hodge from the Brotherhood of Elders. And we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Baba Greg Hodge to do a libation.
All right. Good afternoon, family. It's an honor to be here today. This is, as Brother Cisco said, a very important time in our community, a very challenging and opportune time. For us to actually use our medicine, for us to heal together, for us to hold each other and hope with each other that as we dream for a better day. This idea of a libation, this tradition from the African community it's used in a lot of other places. Maestro Jerry and I were on a call earlier today, and he referenced the fact that, sometimes we were on the block, we might have had a bottle of, English, or Boone's Farm or whatever, and we would pour a little on the ground and scratch the label and say, hey, that's for the brother or sister that's not here. But that tradition, that idea of pouring libation is thousands of years old. In the Nile Valley in Africa, 3,000 years ago, they wrote these words down and said, pour libation for your mother and father who rest in the valley of the west. Do this even when you're away from home. God will witness your actions and accept them. Do this for your parents, and your children will do it for you. So even thousands of years ago, people were concerned with veneration of ancestors, not worship of ancestors, because ancestors are part of that full spiritual, team that we're all part of. And so today we want to pour a libation, and we pour it to the four cardinal directions. In the Yoruba tradition, they would say, Ibashe Ila Orun, Ibashe Iwo Orun, Ibashe Ariwa, Ibashe Guusu. They would say for the spirits, those ancestors from the directions of the east, for in that tradition it represented birth. In the west, it represented death. In the north, represented life. And then in the south, represented the life after this life. They were completely enthralled with this idea that we were all connected spiritually, that we're all connected. And so today we pour this libation for all of those folks in the Nile Valley, the Mississippi Valley, the Amazon River Valley, wherever river people created human engagement, human life, family, economic systems, systems of art, systems of commerce, We pour this libation for them. We say Ashe. As we use this water, which represents life and purity, we pour a libation for all of those people who are educators, musicians, teachers of whatever craft, of all the multiple crafts, from metalworking to fabrics to the dancers to the flautists to all of the arts. For them, we say Ashe.
Ashe.
We pour this libation for ancestors who were caught up in the transatlantic slave trade, those enslaved human beings who were brought to the new so-called New World, to the Americas, for not just their physical labor, but for their intellects, for their ideas about how to clear a field, for their ideas about how to use metal as blacksmiths, for their ideas about how to nurture children. For those ancestors, we pour a libation and say Ashe. We pour a libation today for my Ohlone ancestors. I sit in Oakland on a Ohlone ground. And I grew up in Quapaw and Choctaw country in the Mississippi Delta for the Lakota and the Shawnee and the Iroquois and the Seminole and the Blackfeet and all of those native brothers and sisters. We say Ashe.
Ashe.
We pour this libation for our Asian American brothers and sisters, whether they were from China or Cambodia or Vietnam or Thailand or the Philippines, who were made to work and who were excluded through the Chinese Immigration Act, for instance, who were interned in internment camps during World War II simply for being Japanese ancestry. For those ancestors, we say Ashe.
Ashe.
We pour libation for my Anslan, my Chicano, my familia, La Raza, for my folks on this land, because we kind of forget, like, this is Mexico. This was Mexico. So when the borders got crossed, it was some Europeans crossing borders. It ain't nothing to do with my brown brothers and sisters crossing borders. You didn't cross the border crossed you. Ashe. And so for all those ancestors, for all of the freedom fighters, for all of the people who worked hard, for Cesar Chavez, for Zapata, for all those ancestors, we say muchas gracias and we say Ashe.
Ashe.
We pour this libation today for our European American brothers and sisters, for the Europeans who would really get down with us. I'm not talking about just any old European. I'm talking about the ones like John Brown, like Susan B. Anthony, like the ones Howard Zinn, the ones who wanted to tell the correct story and hold us up in a time where we were being held down. For those ancestors, we say Ashe. So we pour this libation today for all of our ancestors, for ancestors whose names we know, whose names we may not know, and particularly on a day like today, before a national election, when my grandmother was growing up, she couldn't vote. They refused her to vote with things like poll tests. They would have a big can of jelly beans on the counter at the registrars and say, "How many jelly beans in there, girl?" And if you couldn't answer the question, you couldn't vote. It was all a ruse to keep us from voting. Poll taxes, poll tests, all of these barriers to exercising what the Constitution says is all of our right. So for today, for freedom fighters like John Lewis, for freedom fighters like the Schwerner, Cheney, and Goodman, these young men who were killed in Mississippi, for Viola Liuzzi, who was killed, a white woman killed in Alabama, who were part of the Freedom Rise, for all of our ancestors who fought for the right to vote, that we might exercise that vote, exercise that franchise. We close this libation, we say it 3 times, Ashe,
Ashe.
Ashe,
Ashe.
Ashe, and Tamuk, and Ho, and I pass it on. I pass the talking stick, in this case, the jar, over to my brother, my maestro, Jerry Teo, and Mama Susie. Good to see you both.
Mm-hmm. Pues Noxtin no me cae sin. Él es Dios. Greetings, all my relatives. Come to you real humbly today and in great gratitude for another day of life. We thank the Creator and all the ancestors of all ways, of all peoples today. I'm going to take a moment, as in our tradition, we celebrate Dia de los Muertos, right? That celebrates and honors and remembers those that have gone before, that are still with us. Remembers, meaning the member, they were connected member to us, and they're in our blood, they're in our genes, they're in our spirits. We would not be here without them. So we take a moment, and I'm going to invite you to take a deep breath with me. Let's all take a deep breath. We know how sacred that breath is. We've been reminded recently where someone says, "I can't breathe. You take my breath." We also remembered that that sacred breath is what our mamas and all the community waited for when we came into this world. So we begin by honoring that direction of that West where the feminine, our mamas, grandmas, all that feminine, those that are the first warriors, those are the first creators, that they held us in their womb, and they gave us their blood and gave us this drum, the heartbeat, gave us their blood, all to fulfill that dream of the ancestors. Those ancestors that we remember today and that we invite to join us today. Because all those dreams and all the sacrifices, remember our ancestors have struggled, very difficult struggles, painful struggles. Many times we forget that this struggle is not the first one, that our ancestors struggled, but they prayed and they sang and they dreamed and they danced and they continued to dream. And they dreamt that when our mamas brought us into the world, that we would have that first breath. And when we came into the world, that first breath was the fulfillment of their dream. So as you breathe today, invite those ancestors with them, because we need them today. We need their strength. We need their ceremonies. We need their songs. We need their visions. We need their laughter. I invite my tío, who was a jokester, man. He would joke about everything, right? I invite my tia that, man, for anything, she'd take a shot, you know? I invite all the, even the winos on the corner there where I grew up in Compton, no matter what happened, they were there another day. They didn't give up, gathering on that corner. And we acknowledge all the feminine spirit, that sixth sun that says that this is the time in which the women will guide us and lead us and heal us. Let us bring the compassion, and we lift up the dream of compassion so that as we enter the transition, we acknowledge all those people that have crossed over. We've lost many through this COVID. We've lost many through this racial violence. We've lost many through that health inequity. We lost many through that incarceration system. Let's acknowledge all of them and call them to your spirit and call them in your words, bring them to the present so they know we remember them. As we move in that direction of the East that talks about courage, that talks about we must stand up, but let's stand up with that East and West, stand up with compassion and knowing we do it with love. But we can strongly stand up with love too, so that justice does prevail. And in between those two directions of the East and the West, we come to that direction of the South, that direction where the children are the guardians. Let's bring that child within us because many of us are afraid like children today. We don't know what's going to happen. We're anxious, we're nervous, and it's okay. Let's acknowledge that and not be ashamed of that. Let's bring that to the forefront. Let's allow our bodies to feel and give our bodies permission to feel all of those feelings so that we can heal and we can ground ourselves and we can look to that fourth direction of the elders who taught us about the sana sana colita rana, who taught us about how to heal, who taught us about if nothing else works, put some Vicks on because that'll cure everything, right? Who taught us about singing those songs, playing those drums, dancing those rhythms, hugging each other, blessing each other up, laughing and joking, who taught us about all those ways, the ceremonial ways that we need to remember, that we are sacred, that politics do not guide our well-being, that our ancestors and their ways and their prayers and their ceremonies are stronger than any political way. So we call to the ancestors and call to the elders today to be with us and let us bring that out of us today. So as we move through this time of transition, we looked at Tata Sol, grandfather, son, that we know will come up tomorrow, regardless, and the next day, regardless of who occupies that position way up there, it don't matter. Tata Sol will be there. And we still will have Mother Earth to stand on and to lay on that will ground us And remember our breath, that breath of the wind, that regardless of what goes on in your life, remember to breathe and to breathe and to inhale what is good and exhale what you need to release. And then we come to that feminine energy of the water. We remember to drink that water and cleanse ourselves and heal ourselves and cleanse from those fears, cleanse from those insecurities. And then remember for Nana Luna, that great grandmother spirit of the moon, to rest, to trust, to surrender. So we call the ancestor spirit of all those teachings today to be upon us, because that's what will help us ground and heal. And we thank you, each and every one of you, all of you that have joined us today. And we pray for all those that could not join us today. All of us that are in our universe, we pray for all our relatives, even the winged and the creepy crawlers and the two-legged and the four-legged. And we call everyone like that. And we join together in our traditional way, and we say Nkloke Nawake, which means interconnected sacredness. You know, when our spirits are joined together as they are right now, then we can persevere. We thank you very much. And as we move to today in our dialogue and our offering, this is a prayer offering to all of you. And we ask that you open up and offer your prayer and your songs too. And with that, I pass the palabra to Maestra Deborah Camarillo and Maestra Susie, who will share a few words about grounding and healing and honoring of ancestors.
Greetings, my relatives. What a blessing! What a blessing to be on this call. And first of all, I just want to say, thank you. I'm very grateful to Creator, Ipani Moani, right? The one in whom we live and move and have our being. That giver of life. So grateful, for the breath to live another day, and also, in remembrance of all of those, I like to say those that have beat us, right? They're there. They went before us, but we're going. And I sit here with my brothers and my sister, and I know that I'm in this third phase of life, and it is kind of with mixed emotions, right? Because we have to let go, and we embrace, right? We release life, but then we embrace the new lives that come in, but that is the path of life. And so it's a beautiful day and a beautiful time to remember. It's a concentrated, right, remembrance of those that have are ahead of us, our ancestors that have been ahead of us on the path. And as I was thinking about, how that impacts in grounding, right? How does that, because, there's so many I know my ancestors, my loved ones that are already there and are kind of cheering for all of us, right? Because they connect, our ancestors connect in a way that we don't even understand. And what came to mind was my grandmother. So Luisa Cavallo Figueroa. She was an amazing grandmother, and I often thought, man, she just Creator, why did you need her over on that side so much, and because she went at a very young age, and then I think about it, I was like, yeah, he probably needed her there so she could help keep us on track, the rest of us over here on this side, right? Because I'm telling you, I sure needed that support, right? But I was thinking about her and really thinking about grounding and what were those things that just, that just captured her, if I had to say it in that way. And this was a woman. She was a Puerto Rican queen. She's a Puerto Rican woman on the big island of Hawaii. And we had relatives all over on the other islands, but she was on the big island and lived up towards the volcano, Mountain View side. And it's kind of like a rainforest kind of environment. And when I think about her, I see her face, and that face always had this beautiful smile.
Mm.
She had a smile, and she was a woman that just of a lot of laughter. My grandmother was always laughing, and she had, that gold tooth, right? You know how they used to do that, like around right here. So you would see the bling. She was like ahead of everybody. She was blinging back then, and she would smile and laugh, and you'd come by. She was that grandma that would, bring you close, but don't misunderstand me, because you don't want to get on that other side because that boil, if the blood boils, you better run for your life. but she was just jolly. She's just so full of love. And but then when I examined her life, there were things that just kept her grounded and kept her centered. And this was a lady that every morning had to be outside. She would go outside. She had her animals. She'd feed the pigs. We had rabbits, the chickens, the dogs, the cat. There was always animals around. And of course, it's a way of life of nourishment too, right? Because they sacrifice so that we can eat also. But there was a love and a relationship, to the animals, and then her plants, and it wasn't just like their plants. No, they were living entities for her. That when she'd go out there was much care, and there was, here, I'm feeding you, when she'd water or whatever, there you could just see this. And I really think about it, because we come from a big family. Her siblings, there were 18 that they had, right? And but she was the one that you always ran to. Her siblings ran to her. She was the eldest, and they ran to her. But I look and I'm going, how did she relieve that stress? She was out there with the animals. She was out there with the plants, and after doing all that, then she comes into the house, and then she would make nourishment for everyone, because she would do the pasteles. I mean, there was always food, right? Kind of the harvest of what kept you grounded. And I'm telling you, to this day, I have never tasted any pasteles better than hers. And that's the Puerto Rican tamal. And it's just like, oh my God. And I've tried on purpose to try to see if anybody can match hers. But to me, nobody did it greater than hers. But then I think about her mother, Maria Serrano Martinez. And here's a lady that, had the migration experience of coming from Puerto Rico to Hawaii, and what that consisted of, and the struggles that they had when they first got there, because it was very divided at the time. And they brought the Puerto Ricans in to displace the Filipinos, because Dole Pineapple Company wanted to keep control. And so you see, in the midst of still of this encampment, because they all had their camps, trying to just, put their will and their way and enforce their power. But the amazing part about it, because they can't keep us down. I always say we're like the cucarachas. You can never kill us off, and you're never going to stop us, And that lady, with 18 kids and in trying to survive and doing her best, she's a lady that they had this guy, they would call him Frankie Mobile. And he was really the local hobo of the time, your local homeless guy. But even he knew where to go for refuge, and that was at my great-grandmother's house. And this love, my grandmother took care of foster kids, because she wanted to give a place for kids. And especially she wanted the kids that nobody else wanted. If the foster homes didn't want her, she wanted those kids. But she learned it from her mother. And it's funny, one day towards the end of my great-grandmother's life, we went to go see her, because she was at the hospital at the time. And so in the conversation, we were like, she was arguing about food, right? Because she wanted her own food, not the hospital food. So my grandmother had to bring in her own food. And then she said, they say, no, but you have diabetes. It's not good for you. And blah, blah, blah. And she said, no, dame mi comida. And so my grandmother did. But then she said this. She said, in eating of the food, she said, hay que dejar comida para los gusanos. And saying that even in my death, right? And in our death, it's still reciprocity. We still give food, to the animals that will eat your body within the ground. And so, that's, just, a couple lessons of grounding for me. I hear my dad's words, and he's transitioned on to 14 years this year. And he always said, mija, wherever you go, be a blessing. And so if we can remind ourselves of those things, right? That it's always a give and a get and a give, right? An exchange. It's always an exchange of reciprocity. And yes, and these are what keep me grounded. This is Quatzin, and and our relations to all of our relatives, all of them, because anything that has breath is life. It has life. It's living, and we can't forget that. And so, and so just remembering those beautiful lessons of we're here to serve others, we're here to give, and if we can remember those things, then you know what, our provisions will be taken care of also. And so tonight, in grounding lessons, I would call in Maria Serrano Martinez and also Luisa Serrano Figueroa. And I'll pass that on to Maestra Susie. That's my deal.
Gracias, Maestra. So nice to sit in Círculo with you. Cisco, Greg, Maestro Jerry. That's a very special day. Honoring our loved ones, their ancestors. Had a wonderful day yesterday and evening, just preparing my altar and putting all the pictures up. It's such a good dichotomy, it's so much joy, seeing their pictures and connecting with everyone. And also, a little sadness that as I was putting the picture, that's realizing there's more of my family on the other side of the veil than here now. Although we have our spiritual family, we have our NCN family, gracias a Dios, and our children. But, my mom, my dad, my brothers, my tia, that just passed away on Mother's Day. It just a little nostalgic for everyone. But at the same time, it just, a lot of anxiety too about how we're going to move forward and this election coming up and how that's going to play out and I'm going to ground myself, how am I going to stay centered with all of it. And it was interesting because as I was putting each picture, I asked each one of them, for a consejo. What was their words of wisdom that they wanted to share? And really put the pictures intentionally, and I really listened intentionally. And they had some powerful things to say, and things that I know they shared with me when they were here, but just reiterating them. And as they just spoke to my heart, they was like, thank you. Thank you for reminding me. Thank you. Speaking to my daddy, he was a character. I learned a lot of lessons from him, and they weren't always in the best way, but they really helped to make me who I am as far as learning, about compassion and about being careful how we use our words, how we use our voice, because they can hurt, So at the same time, he was just sharing with me, like, don't be afraid to speak your voice. But don't do it the way I did it. Do it with a lot more love and less anger. And that made me happy because that was his wound, a lot of anger, and that was the way he protected himself. So, and I went on, of course, Maestro Florencio Yescas, this again reminded me to keep dancing. Like he always said, as long as you can walk, you can dance. Even if it's not in the way, the choreography is different, but you can still continue to dance with life. And you can still teach, and you can still share, and you can still keep the traditions alive. And thank you, Maestro Florencio, for that. And then it came to my Maria Camacho, who just passed away on Mother's Day, my tia. And our plan was, as soon as COVID was over, that we were going to get together. She lives in Oceanside, and we're going to walk along the beach, and we're going to go and we're going to have lunch on the beach and connect with the ocean, and we're going to talk. And we had all this vision, but unfortunately never made it. But she spoke very loud, Don't forget to take time for you. Don't forget to connect with nature, connect with the ocean, connect with the healing waters, and lay in the sun, and let the wind blow through your hair, and stay grounded that way. So thank you, Maria, for that. Also wanted to give acknowledgement to Miguel Delgado, was one of my maestros, another one, and he was about the laughter. Like Master Deb said, don't forget to laugh. Don't take life so seriously. Keep laughing. Find the joy. Don't lose your joy in your heart. That medicine. That laughter is medicine. So that's a lot of people on there. I could go on forever, but those were the biggest. And of course, I won't forget my mom. And she had suffered so much and went through a lot of things, but I always remember her, the 4 words that always remind me of her was that she never complained, she never criticized, and she never condemned. And she was always unconditionally loving. No matter what, she always maintained her heart, and was able to know how to let go, how to forgive. And some days I'm better with that than others. But she made sure I remember, let things go. Don't hang on to that. Keep your spirit pure. Keep your spirit light. And don't let anything steal your joy. So I thank all of my familia for that. I thank you all. And I just feel so grateful to everyone. And I hope that maybe some of these messages will help you as we go forward to remember how to ground yourself and how to keep walking and not be afraid to acknowledge what you feel, your emotions. We're always taught not to feel our emotions. I think it starts off with, like Maestro Jerry says, acknowledgement. Acknowledge what you're feeling so that you can help to process that and bring the light to that. Adelante. Thank you so much.
Well, I want to thank you, Maestra Deb and Maestra Susie, for your words. The cariño, you could feel the cariño for your family, the memories. And before I pass it over to Maestro Jerry and Baba Greg too, like for me, again, my name is Francisco. When I grew up, as a teenager, I was dealing with gangs and other things. And I came in to learn about muertos, like really learn about it. I went to a private Chicano high school. They taught us about our culture. And I really believe La Cultura Cura is real, and it saved my life. And Muertos was one of those ones that saved my life too. That because when my friends would get killed or things were happening, I didn't know how to process it. All I knew was anger. Or being drunk it was either happy or mad. I didn't really know the difference. I just went from one emotion to the next. And what Muertos did for me, I remember the first time we had at CHOC, it's called the Chicano Humanities and Arts Council. It's a art gallery in Denver. And they invited me and my friends, not just me, to do an altar. And we took all the newspaper articles. A lot of our friends were dying, and we built this big altar dedicated to all the youth that died in gang violence. And I remember some kids coming in as we were putting it together. Like there was actually guys crying, reading the articles. Like, it was very a healing experience for us. Very healing. I remember putting the favorite food. If you're from Denver, you know everyone likes Chubby, so we put some Chubbies there, put some stuff, and it really made me feel good. And part of what I really would like, part about for me this grounding is, and I'm glad you talked about it, is even though I get to really bring my father, my grandparents on both sides, and I had a daughter who passed away. I get to remember them, but Muertos isn't so much about dying, it's about living. It's about what you're going to do and how you're going to live. And there is loss in our life, but we can remember them and carry them with us. And that what things that we're working towards has to be about how our life is now, how we want our relatives to remember us, the stories they're going to tell about us. And part of that's sharing. You know what I mean? I just want to share that piece and go ahead and pass it over to Baba Greg. And, thank you again, Baba Greg, for your words, your libation. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I thank everybody on the call who's listening, everybody who's speaking, because our ancestors are with us and they're smiling, we're doing the right thing, and they're kind of a little consternation when we're not doing the right thing. And, and I think how we listen for them, there's the song that Sweet Honey in the Rock used to sing. It was listen more often to things than to beings, because that's the ancestor's voice in the sounds of the waters and the sounds of the grass and the sounds of the trees. And I think in these busy urban environments, a lot of times we have too much concrete. We're not out in nature enough to really hear and listen. And so I'm hoping in this season, as we think about all of the sacrifices that people have made, even the grief that's in the air around more than 230,000 people who have died from the COVID virus, and in many communities not being able to really grieve properly, being able to show up in the same physical space. And so we're having to really readjust ourselves to a lot. And I also think about, in the context of that, we're going through a challenging time, but I don't really know of any ancestors that didn't have a challenging time. Like, they pretty much, like, the reason we call their names is because they had to overcome something, right? And so when I think about all those people, like, in my family's history, names that I don't even know, of people who may have struggled because they just simply wanted to be, have opportunity. They simply wanted to be themselves. And so as we think about them, I think it is important for us to acknowledge all of the work that they've done, all of the work that we can do in their name, and do something. And I generally feel like this is do something useful in life, do something that, actually has an impact on somebody else's life is more important than almost anything else you can do. And I think that if we do that, and I'm hoping that all of us are doing enough work so that, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, that somebody will actually call our names, that somebody will say, oh yeah, Maestro, Jerry, and Maestra Deborah, and Cisco, and Maestra Suzanne, they did something. And then we did something worth remembering, something that would be worthy of the water that would be poured for us. And I'm confident that we'll do that. I'm confident that we'll all make that kind of a contribution. So I don't know. When I think about ancestors in that way, and often trying to put myself in their shoes, like what were they thinking? How did they keep their hope? How did they keep their faith? How did they keep their energy? And I think it must have been in those simple things. Every day looking at the sun, every day feeling the warm ground beneath your bare feet, every day drinking a cool sip of water, the simple things. I mean, I feel like the meals that I've had around the world, no matter how good the food was, the best thing that happened at the end of that meal was somebody handed me a cup of cool water. Somebody said, here, have some little water. So there's some simple things that continue to remind us of our connectedness, some simple things that continue to remind us of who we are. So I'm going to pass it back to Maestro Jerry. Anything else you want to add to this conversation?
Well, yeah, thank you, Baba Greg. And you said reminded of connections. And, I think about this time that many people are struggling, and especially there's an anticipation for tomorrow, what's going to happen. People are afraid, people are anxious, and it reminds me of the teaching that were given to me by the women, and they said, you wouldn't be here if your mama didn't struggle. Okay, she wasn't willing to sacrifice and go through some pain. So recognize that even the butterfly, had to go through a struggle. And when they're in the cocoon, all they could see is darkness. They didn't know butterfly was on the other side. They just knew darkness, right? And they had to wait and then get through that darkness. And then finally that metaphor took place. And I think about, just the blessing, Baba Greg, of you in my life. We came together because we were trying to help people that were struggling. But if people weren't struggling, maybe I wouldn't know you. Maybe we wouldn't have this relationship. So even in the darkest and struggling of moments, and I'm hoping that the awareness that has been created by, the last several years, that it brings about, awareness to what is not right, what is not normal, what is not healthy, but that it also metamorphoses not into an anger that hurts us and hurts each other, but transforms into a feeling of anger that can then transform into love. That we do this out of love, but I'm gonna be real. That I have to remind myself sometimes that, people changing positions, last time didn't change my life a lot, and probably not going to change my life a lot right now. We have to be responsible and vote and do all of that and do what we need to do. But what really is significant is what we do with that change that happens, what we do with that. And so my prayer is that, people will invest and nurture their faith and not their fear, that will reground themselves in their ceremonies. And right now we all need to be praying and sending good energy out there, because we also know, like in every family, like in every community, we got some wounded folks. I had some wounded folks in my house. And I know when they get angry, what they're going to do. It's not good. And so many times I'd have to pray. I hope my uncle don't get mad. I hope, you pray for that. And it's amazing how many times those prayers were answered. We need to pray that whatever comes through, in these next few days, that there's a blessing from the ancestors. There's some compassion. There's some healing that goes on. But what this whole transition, including COVID, including all the stuff with racism and all the inequities and the injustice, kids locked in cages, all this awareness, what it says is we need to heal.
Yeah. I wanted to ask the mamas on the phone if they wouldn't mind blessing us up on some mama energy, because this is how spirit works, right? So when I heard about this was happening today, it was kind of short notice or whatever, but today is the 7th anniversary of my mom's passing.
Oh.
And so I've been thinking about this person a lot today. This is Bobby Jean Island Hodge. This is my mom. But just on behalf of the mamas, because every day I'm trying to do something that makes my mama proud. I got a really basic standard now. Am I doing stuff that's useful, that would make my mother and father proud of me, right? So in honor of my mom, I would love it if you all would just share a little bit from the mama side.
I think I would reiterate what I said earlier, what my mother said to me about trying very hard to be mindful, not to criticize, not condemn, not complain. She always taught me that no matter what darkness is going on, and whoever that person is in front of you that might be casting that shadow, to look deeper. Because if you look deep enough, you're going to see the light. We all have a light. And, depending where we're at on our journey, there have been many times myself that light was just a flicker, just ready to go out. My spirit was tired. I was tired of the struggle. I was tired of pretending. that there wasn't a struggle, that everything was fine. I was tired of pretending that I was stronger than I felt.
Mm.
But I knew I had to persevere. And when I would think of her, that would give me that strength, that all the challenges that she was going through and her health and all the abuse that she had to endure, that she was able to still not let that steal her spirit. She was still stayed centered in her heart. And like I said, and she just had that ability to forgive like somebody I've never met since. She just had this unconditional loving spirit and forgiveness that is just beyond this world. I know it's the grace of Creator over her. And I think the words that stick out to me too is what Maestro Derry was just sharing about to pray, to trust, to surrender, and most of all, to love. Love heals. Primero Dios. God bless you, everyone. Maestra Deb?
I didn't have the privilege to physically birth any children. And I thought for many, many years that, I really couldn't speak to motherhood. And so it wasn't until an elder spoke to me. And so actually there's a young man and a young woman who I consider my kids. And I had the privilege in a relationship to help raise them. And so that's probably the closest I got to maybe raising children. But even though I didn't birth any children, I have so many children.
Absolutely. That's it.
And I think that when we talk about motherhood, just the physical birthing is just a very small part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because what our mamas give us is that they give us this sense of connection. They give us a sense of purpose and being. That's why it's so difficult when we have our relationships that are broken with our mother. It's so difficult because the part that we're supposed to inherit there goes missing, and it's a core factor in our hearts, right? And so one of the things that I think has been easier for me because I haven't birthed children is that I have the freedom to love unconditionally. Because you're not gonna destroy my image of being a good parent. Right? So go ahead. I have that ability then to go, make your mistakes. I'll give you my advice that you want. But you're gonna have to figure it out yourself. And so that allows, but really the heart of a mother is that, because the heart of a mother will love their children unconditionally, no matter what. So you could be the biggest, dim-wit, not very smart person, right? Knucklehead.
Why are you looking at me, Maestra, when you say that?
You could be that knucklehead, but you know what? Mama's going to love you regardless. And I know that I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for my mother's love, unconditional love, and the messes that I created. So, your mother's looking at you from a different direction. Like a lot of our mothers that have already beat us to the punch and are up there, with all the ancestors. But their unrelenting love, I think, is something that we can always draw from. And her love to you, Baba Greg, you're still the apple of her eye. She still loves you. You're her number one in that way. And I know that she is just showering you with love and affection.
Oh, I appreciate it, Maestro Deborah. My mother used to say, you're my favorite son. And I was like, but I'm your only son.
So you knew she wasn't lying.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, I see us laughing, and I think, I want to just remind everybody to laugh. That laughter is medicine. That, we think sometimes our families are crazy, but sometimes that's all you can do is laugh. Things are so crazy, so stuff. You just got to laugh. And so take time to laugh, take time to sing, put some good music on next couple of days that makes you laugh and sing and sing it loud. It doesn't matter what kind of voice you have, just sing. You got music, play them drums, hug those animals, drink a lot of water, rest, and then give it up. Give it up. Right. Because you put it in the ancestor creator's hands, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Yeah.
That's right.
That's a big truth, right? That's a big truth because, sometimes we go, and I know me and Master Susie talk about this a lot. It's so easy to go, okay, we're going to surrender this to Creator, and then we're done, and then we grab it all back and then take it, and then we got to, and we have to understand that, it's like, do you want to be responsible or do you want Creator to be responsible?
That's right.
And I think I want Creator to be responsible.
That's right. Okay, let it go.
Let it go.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate Vice Jerry's advice about singing. You got to sing. You got to sing. We had a little drum circle in my yard yesterday, and when it was over, later in that evening, I came outside just to water the grass and stuff, and have a neighbor, white guy who lives on the other side of the fence, and he came out and he said, like you all were playing drums today, and it was like a blessing. And there was a woman with us from Mali named Mariam, and she's a beautiful dancer. But this was just it was a drum circle. She danced a little bit, but she sang, and she was teaching everybody a song. And he was really moved by this song, like not somebody who I would have thought. And I was thinking, like, when I got drums in my yard, I'm thinking, okay, the neighbors gonna complain, they gonna like music or something. And they were like, no, it was great. But he said the voice, like her voice, was just such a healing, calming kind of thing. And it was just for a few minutes. It wasn't very long. And then the last thing I'll say about singing, my dad was a choir director. And so I grew up around a lot of really good music. And, people would come to our house to practice for weddings and other events, at churches and stuff. And but my dad would come over sometimes for choir rehearsal because he had two choirs. He had his church choir, and then he had a citywide choir where he had recruited people into this choir to represent the city of Pine Bluff, where I grew up. But sometimes on his frustration with people, he would say, well, everybody can sing, but some people shouldn't sing so loud. But this is in the context of a choir. So, so when you're by yourself, you can sing.
I wonder if I could, speaking of singing, I want to see if our brother Cisco might sing us a ceremonial song to help bless us up and maybe bring some healing. I know Cisco is moderating tonight, but he in his own right, has especially in Denver, but all over. People know him all over. Really is a servant in the community. There's a lot of beautiful work. Strong work helps, bring people together. It helps heal people. It brings a lot of knowledge, and we're real proud that he's part of our team here. Even though the brothers in Denver right now say, "Yeah, you took him." No, he's still part of Denver too. He's part of, and nobody can claim anybody. We're part of everything. But Brother Cisco, I wonder if you would say a few words and then sing, bless us up with a song.
Well, I want to thank you again, Maestro, for your words and for your guidance too, as a mentor of mine. I feel, and you, Maestra Susie, also for your love. You're a very loving, giving person. I really appreciate that. It shows in the way you heal people through that, and I still feel a little bit of that pain, with you. And as well as Maestra Deborah, I really appreciate you as well. And I know there are a lot of women look up to you. My sister Angel and other women, they really hold you up high esteem. You know what I mean? And I'm with them when it comes to that. I know that you've not only have you been around a lot, but you're one of the few people who actually takes those experiences and be able to reflect it back so people can learn, as well as Baba Greg. I appreciate your words and your willingness to connect too with as you're connected with your people, but you're connected with us too. I've been in many spaces with you, so I just wanted to say that much. And also thank everyone that came on. I wish we had more time to take questions. After we're done singing, maybe we could ask people if they have a few questions to ask, they can. But, for me, healing it has always been, it took me a while to get into ceremony and really accept it, really just sit there and kind of find my healing, really just, I remember the first time sitting in a sweat and just crying, just being vulnerable. Nobody could see me, or, it was dark and this and that. And I felt vulnerable, but I was okay because I knew I was all right. My macho manhood didn't get in the way because I could hide, through the darkness, And I know a lot of people say darkness, they feel it's sad, but darkness is also a good thing. It is that the balance between light and dark, don't be afraid of that. And so anyway, I'm going to sing this song. It's a Native American church style song, and it talks about the idea of Olin, and that through that movement that you can heal yourself if you take charge of your life and take charge. You can't always control the situation. You could only control what you do in it. And that's what this is about. How do we push forward and acknowledge our life and acknowledge our interconnectedness, our love for one another. And, it is, even though we have our own individual cultures and ethnic groups, we are more alike than we're not. And once you know who you are, you're going to see yourself in other people. So I hope that you could take that with you, this message of that. Anyway, the song goes, hey, Yana, where yo, Yana, away. Hey, Yana, where yo, Yana, away, yo, Yana, away. Hey, Yana, where yo, Yana, away, yo, Yana, away. Hey, Yana, away, yo, Yana, away. Hey, Yana, away, yo, na, hey, ne, yo, way. Now we all need ya, we Yana, away. Ipanamawani Yana we do Yana we it loke na wake Yana we do Yana we hey Yana we do Yana we hey Yana we do na hey ne yo we hey Yana we do Yana we hey Yana we do Yana we do Yana we hey Jana we do Jana we do Jana we hey Jana we do Jana we hey Jana we do na hey ni we na we o tintia we Jana we Ipanamawani Jana we do Jana we it loke na wake Jana we do Jana we hey Jana we do Jana we hey Jana we do na hey
Oh.
So it's 6 o'clock. We want to respect everyone's time, but just a quick, last parting thoughts. A few things, maybe one or two things people can do for grounding, whatever you want to share. Let's go ahead and start over here with Maestro Jerry.
I would just say, remember the Creator and the ancestors are much bigger and more powerful than anything. Trust in them and recognize that we will get through all of this in a good way. Let's trust our ancestors, trust our traditions, trust all those elements, the water, the wind, grandfather, sun, the earth, and rest. Take your time to rest and feed your faith and not your fear. I hope.
Mm-hmm. I hope.
Maestra, Susie?
Yes. Release and surrender. All is well.
Mm-hmm.
It's like remembering our ancestors and their struggles. That this is the time that they prepared us for. This is a time to step up. It's not a time to collapse. It's a time to live the teachings and teach them. Always remember the ancestors and Creator are always watching, but we're the medium because the children are always watching too. So we need to teach them and be that reflection for them. So as they grow and they have to face their struggles, they're going to remember what they saw us do.
Mm.
Embrace your children. Love your children. It's a fearful time for them. Don't forget to hug them. Don't forget to hold them. Don't forget to look in their eyes to their soul, so that they know you're here for them, that everything's going to be okay. Adelante.
Ooh.
I would say, listen, time change, right? The events might change, but we choose to change or not change. And how we change, is up to us. And so the African proverb of walk where you're loved, I think this is time where, remember, stay close with people that have that same metta, that same goal in mind, that path of healing, the path of blessing, that path. And so stay around those type of people so that your soul's nourished and not your fear, And I always like to say, believe. You either believe or you don't believe. And so this is the time you're going to have your faith or you're not going to have your faith. So it's really up to us, right? But, that's part of life. There's always going to be changes, but we have the option to choose the changes that we make. And so my hope is that we choose to continue on this healing path and make those types of changes for our healing, for our community's healing, for our family's healing, and healing in a good way. Thank you, Elizabeth. And thank you very much for allowing me to be here tonight and to be with my wonderful brothers and sisters.
Papa Gray.
Yeah. And I would just say I wholeheartedly agree with everything that's been said. Get outside a little bit every day. If you're feeling a little down, look up at the sun. The sun is always a marker. It's always there for us. Drink good water every day. Try to do something for other people while you're taking care of yourself. And make sure you're taking care of yourself and be gentle with yourselves. This is a time where there's a lot going on, and we're going to be all right. You might be a little tired, but, I'm sure that I had ancestors who were tired of chopping cotton, tired of picking tobacco, tired of picking strawberries, tired of being tired. And so, we generally don't have that life. But even if we have that life, get your rest, sleep at night, do the things that really are going to nurture your body, your spirit, and your mind, and then pass it on to other people. Ashe.
Ashe.
Well, before we wrap it up, I just want to remind everybody, I put a link in the comments in Facebook that shares the kind of link tree for NCN, the National Compadres Network. But you can also go to the National Compadres Network.org. You can also go to the Brotherhood of Elders.org as well and learn about all the different things we're doing. That we have a podcast called the Healing Generations Podcast. It's evolved. You can go to Spotify, Apple, anywhere you find your podcast, so you could find it and please listen and share with it. Let your relatives know. This healing journey is a long one. It's a journey. It's not a destination. So I just want to remind everybody of that. Thank you all once again. I want to say a ho to all the panelists. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Many blessings.
Hey, blessings, family.
For more information about Healing Generations and the Healing Generations Institute, visit nationalcompadresnetwork.org and be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with our new releases.